Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet little maid, much beloved by everybody, but most of all by her grandmother, who could not do enough for her. She gave the girl a hooded cape of red velvet, and it was very becoming, and she never wore anything else. People called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here are some cakes and a jug of cider to take to grandmother. She is weak and ill, and they will do her good. Hurry before it grows hot, and walk properly and nicely, and don't run, or you might fall and break the jug of cider, and there will be none left for grandmother. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say, 'Good morning,' instead of staring all around you." "I will be sure to take care," promised Little Red Riding Hood. Now the grandmother lived deep in the wood, half an hour's walk from the village. When Little Red Riding Hood had reached the wood, she met the wolf, and she did not know what a bad sort of animal he was, so she did not feel frightened. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," he said. "Thank you kindly, wolf," she answered. "Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's." "What are you carrying in your basket?" "Cakes and cider. We baked yesterday, and my grandmother is very weak and ill, so we will do her good and strengthen her." "Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?" "A quarter of an hour's walk from here. Her house stands beneath 3 large oak trees, and you will easily know it by the hazel bushes," said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "This tender young thing would be a delicious morsel and would taste better than the old one. I must manage somehow to get both of them." He walked next to Little Red Riding Hood a little while, and then he said, "Little Red Riding Hood, just look at the pretty flowers that are growing all around you. And I don't think you are listening to the song of the birds. You are walking along just as if you were going to school, and it is so delightful here in the wood." Little Red Riding Hood glanced around her, and when she saw the sunbeams darting here and there through the trees and the lovely flowers everywhere, she thought to herself, "If I take a fresh bouquet to my grandmother, she would be very pleased." So she ran about in the wood looking for flowers, and as she picked one, she saw a still prettier one a little farther off, and so she went farther and farther into the wood. But the wolf went straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" cried the grandmother. "Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf answered, "and I have brought you some cake and cider. Please open the door." "You can open it," cried the grandmother. "I am too weak to get up." So the wolf opened the door and went right in. Without saying a word, he walked to the bed and ate up the poor grandmother in an instant, for he had been more than 3 days without food. Then he put on her nightcloths, laid down in bed, and drew the curtains around him. Little Red Riding Hood was all this time running about in the wood among the flowers, and when she had gathered as many as she could hold, she remembered her grandmother and set off again on the path to her house. When she arrived at the cottage, she was surprised to find the front door standing open, and when she went inside, she felt very strange and thought to herself, "Oh dear, how uncomfortable I feel today, and at other times I am always so happy to visit with my grandmother." And when she said, "Good morning, grandmother," there was no answer. The Little Red Riding Hood went over to the bed and slowly drew back the curtains. There lay the grandmother with her nightcap pulled down over her eyes so that she looked very odd. "Oh, grandmother, what large ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my dear." "Oh, grandmother, what great eyes you have."
"The better to see you with, my dear."
"Oh, grandmother, what large hands you have."
"The better to hold you with, my dear."
"But, grandmother, "What a terrible large mouth you have,
the better to eat you with."
And no sooner than the wolf had said this, than he made one bound from the bed and swallowed up the poor little Red Riding Hood. Then the wolf, having satisfied his hunger, went to sleep and began to snore loudly. A hunter, passing by, heard the snoring and thought,
"How that old woman snores! I had better see if there's anything the matter with her."
Then the hunter went into the bedroom, walked over to the bed, and saw the wolf lying there fast asleep.
"At last I found you, old beast," he said. "I have been looking for you for quite a long time."
And the hunter suddenly realized that the wolf had swallowed the grandmother whole, and that she might yet be saved. So he did not fire his gun, but he took a pair of shears and began to slit open the sleeping wolf. When he made a few snips, he saw the little red cap, and after a few more snips, Little Red Riding Hood jumped out and cried, "Oh dear, how frightened I have been! It is so dark inside the wolf!" And then out came the old grandmother, still living and breathing. Little Red Riding Hood went and quickly fetched some large stones, with which she filled the wolf's body, so that when he woke up and tried to rush away, the stones were so heavy that he sank down and fell dead. They were all three very pleased. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother thanked the hunter, who had returned to his hunting in the forest. The grandmother ate the cakes and drank the cider and began to feel much better. Little Red Riding Hood said to herself that as long as she lived, she would never leave the path and stray about in the wood alone, and she would always do exactly what her mother told her. The end.